Anjali and Meera were more than just cousins. Behind closed doors, their secret love defied family, tradition, and society. But what began as a forbidden affair in a small Indian town would spiral into obsession, betrayal, and one of the most shocking murders the community had ever witnessed. In a quiet Indian town, two young women grew up as cousins, bound together by family ties and shared childhood memories. From the outside, their relationship seemed ordinary, even wholesome. They spent afternoons studying together, preparing meals, and walking through the narrow lanes of their neighborhood. The family never questioned their closeness. In fact, it was encouraged. To everyone around them, they were simply inseparable cousins. But behind this innocent facade, something unusual was happening. As they grew older, their connection deepened in ways that neither of them had expected. Small touches lingered a little longer than they should have. Stolen glances carried unspoken meaning, and late-night conversations filled with laughter slowly transformed into moments of longing. They discovered a kind of intimacy that was both thrilling and terrifying, a bond they could not explain yet could not deny. Their secret moments became their private world. A brush of the hand while passing a book, a shared blanket during power cuts, the quiet comfort of leaning on each other when no one else was watching. All of these tiny gestures stitched together a hidden relationship. The walls of their home sheltered them, but those same walls were also barriers. They knew what they felt was considered wrong, a violation of both family honor and cultural expectations. Still, the thrill of secrecy pulled them closer. Each meeting became more daring. They carved out pockets of time away from prying eyes, pretending to run errands or help each other with chores. In those moments, they felt free, as if they were the only two people in the world. Yet, even as they embraced their feelings, they carried the heavy knowledge that discovery would destroy everything. It was a fragile love, balanced on the sharp edge of fear. The cousins lived in constant fear that someone might notice their unusual closeness. Every time a family member entered the room unexpectedly, they would pull away, their hearts racing. What looked like innocent companionship to others felt dangerously exposed to them. They were careful with their gestures, careful with their words, careful even with the way they looked at each other. The smallest slip could mean disaster, and this fear haunted them daily. As the years passed, new pressures began to mount. Marriage proposals started arriving for one cousin, carefully arranged by her parents with pride and expectation. The very idea of being handed over to a stranger filled her with dread. For the other cousin, these proposals were unbearable. They represented a threat far greater than discovery, the threat of being torn apart forever. Each time relatives discussed potential grooms, jealousy and panic surged in the hidden lover's heart. The secret affair no longer felt like a simple escape. It became a desperate struggle against time, against family, and against tradition. They whispered promises of never letting go, clinging to each other like lifelines. But beneath those promises was a growing sense of doom. Every day seemed to bring them closer to the moment when someone would notice or when the family's plans would force them apart. Fear soon shaped their behavior. They avoided even casual family gatherings, afraid of slipping up under watchful eyes. Their notes grew darker, filled with anxiety and pleas to hold on. What once had been joyful secrecy now felt suffocating. The thrill of hidden love had turned into a heavy burden they could no longer escape. In the quiet corners of their hearts, both cousins understood that their world was fragile and it could shatter at any moment. The pressure from the family became relentless. The cousin receiving proposals was often called into long conversations with her parents, who spoke of duty, respect, and the importance of settling down. Photographs of potential grooms were shown to her, and relatives spoke with excitement about her future. To the family, these discussions were signs of progress, but to her secret lover, they were unbearable reminders of an ending that felt inevitable. Jealousy began to seep into their hidden world. The cousin who faced no marriage pressure grew restless and suspicious. She started questioning every action, every delay, and every excuse. When her partner came home late after family meetings, she imagined betrayal. What had once been soft affection now turned into sharp accusations written in secret letters or whispered during stolen encounters. The bond that had once brought comfort was now riddled with tension. At night, both struggled with their emotions. The cousin facing proposals felt trapped between loyalty to her family and love for the one she could never openly claim. She began to wonder if giving in would bring peace. Meanwhile, the other cousin clung more tightly, convinced that any thought of marriage was proof of disloyalty. The closeness that had once been their refuge now felt like a battlefield. Arguments replaced laughter. Promises turned into demands. The secrecy that had once protected them now felt like a prison. Each time they met, the air grew heavier, charged with frustration and desperation. The more one tried to create distance to think clearly, the more the other resisted, holding on with an almost frantic intensity. Their love was no longer balanced. It had become a storm of obsession and resentment, setting the stage for choices that would change everything forever. The cousin who faced the weight of marriage proposals finally confessed her growing exhaustion. She admitted that resisting her family's wishes was becoming impossible and hinted at surrendering to their demands. For her, it was an attempt to escape the suffocating tension, but for her lover, it was betrayal of the highest order. The words echoed like a curse, igniting a dangerous mix of jealousy and desperation. What had once been a hidden romance suddenly transformed into a fight for ownership. The rejected cousin could not accept the idea of losing her partner to a man chosen by the family. In her mind, love and possession fused into one. The thought of sharing her with anyone else was unbearable. Every detail of a potential wedding, ceremonies, photographs, the permanence of vows, fed her anger. She began to view her cousin not as an equal partner, but as something she must keep at any cost. Dark thoughts crept in during sleepless nights. What if there was a way to end the threat forever? What if no marriage could happen because the bride was gone? The questions replayed until they hardened into a grim plan. It was no longer about holding on to love, but about erasing the possibility of loss. The plan grew sharper with each passing day. She watched closely, studied routines, and imagined scenarios. She told herself it was the only solution, convincing herself that violence was not cruelty but protection. The idea of escape, running away together, no longer felt practical. Only one path remained in her distorted vision. If her cousin would not remain hers willingly, then she would make sure no one else could ever claim her. What began as love was now reshaped into a deadly intention, carefully hidden beneath silence. The night was thick with silence when the obsessed cousin put her plan into action. The house was asleep, and the world outside seemed frozen in time. She whispered an excuse for a secret meeting, promising her cousin that it would be just another stolen moment away from prying eyes. The unsuspecting girl agreed, still torn between love and duty, never imagining that this meeting would become her last. They walked quietly to a secluded spot, a place that had once been their refuge. The air was heavy, carrying the weight of unspoken words. The cousin who carried the knife hid her intentions behind a mask of calm. Inside, her heart raced, not with affection, but with the storm of jealousy and fear that had been building for months. When the moment arrived, it happened quickly. The knife appeared, glinting faintly in the dim light. What began as a confrontation driven by desperation exploded into sudden violence. The blade struck with a force fueled by rage and obsession, silencing pleas before they could even be fully formed. The once cherished body was left broken, stained by the very hands that had once held it tenderly. The setting that had been a sanctuary for their love was now transformed into a scene of horror. The killer stood over her cousin, trembling, consumed not by regret, but by a twisted sense of finality. She told herself it was the only way, that this act had secured their bond forever. The quiet night absorbed the violence, leaving no witness but the shadows. The forbidden affair had ended in blood, and the fragile line between love and possession had been erased forever. What once connected them had now destroyed them, leaving only silence and a lifeless body hidden in the dark. Shaken by what she had done, the killer moved quickly to cover her crime. Panic battled with determination as she dragged the body to an abandoned field on the edge of town. The ground was hard, the task brutal, but she forced herself to dig until her hands were raw. She buried her cousin under layers of soil, hoping darkness and distance would swallow the evidence. When the grave was complete, she covered her tracks, wiped her hands on her clothing, and returned home as if nothing had happened. At first, the disappearance stirred confusion but not alarm. Relatives assumed the missing girl had run away to escape the looming marriage. The family, though worried, clung to this explanation because it was easier to accept than imagining something darker. Days passed with whispered speculation, but the killer maintained a facade of concern, pretending to search while hiding the truth. However, cracks began to form in her story. Bloodstains that she thought were washed clean remained faintly visible. A missing scarf, last seen with her, raised questions. Neighbors recalled seeing the two cousins together that night, walking toward the edge of town. The excuses she offered sounded rehearsed, and suspicion grew. The police became involved when the family reported the absence officially. Investigators quickly noticed inconsistencies. Her nervous demeanor, the altered timeline of events, and the lack of convincing evidence that the girl had run away pointed to foul play. The community that once believed in the closeness of the cousins now began to murmur about secrets. What the killer hoped would remain hidden was unraveling thread by thread. The grave in the field waited silently, holding the truth beneath the soil, while above ground, suspicion spread like wildfire through the town. The investigation pressed forward, and the truth could no longer remain buried. After days of searching, police were led to the abandoned field. The disturbed soil raised immediate suspicion, and with careful digging, the body was uncovered. The discovery silenced the town in shock. Whispers turned into cries of horror as the missing cousin was brought back, not alive, but as a victim of brutal betrayal. The secret grave exposed not just a crime, but a hidden life that no one had ever imagined. Forensic evidence tied everything back to the killer. The knife wounds, the stains on her clothing, and the inconsistencies in her story left no room for escape. Under questioning, she tried at first to deny involvement, but the weight of proof was crushing. Finally, she confessed, not with tears of regret, but with a chilling conviction that what she had done was an act of love. Her words unsettled even the investigators, revealing how obsession had twisted her mind. When news spread that the crime had been driven by a forbidden affair, the community erupted with disbelief. Families whispered in fear, struggling to reconcile the image of two seemingly ordinary cousins with the dark reality that had unfolded. Shame and anger rippled through households, and the once tightly woven fabric of tradition felt frayed. The trial that followed was swift. The killer faced judgment not only in the courtroom, but also in the eyes of the entire town. She was sentenced to a life of punishment, her freedom gone forever, while the memory of her cousin remained frozen in tragedy. What began as secret affection ended in blood, betrayal, and broken families. The story became a haunting reminder of how hidden desires, when poisoned by fear and obsession, can destroy everything in their path.